I could be delusional, but that's what I remember. But at that point, when I heard that sound, that was it. And so every time I played bass, I'd take all the bass off, because back then amps weren't really high tech like they are now. So I just take the bass off, and just all you heard was treble, and sound men and everybody come up and go, dude, where's the low end? I go, this is my sound. I mean, literally, there was hardly any bass. There was no bass in King's X, just clack. High end, and I got deeper and deeper as the years went by, but because I when I got the Ampeg amp, I realized, you can have a full bottom now and the top with the guitar head. So then I could blend it to, then it became huge again.
Yeah, which is what Chris Squire did. He used a guitar amp, a Marshall?
He had a Marshall and a acoustic. Because I saw them guys in Chicago in '72. I think it was Peter Frampton, Leonard Skinner, Yes, and Gary Wright.
Probably for like $3.
It was about $3, and there was about 40,000 people there. Yeah, it was in Chicago, in Comiskey. No, not Comiskey. It was in Cicero in Chicago, some place. And I couldn't wait, because I'd never seen him before. And they set the stuff up. And I don't know about you, but anytime I went to a concert, I went early to watch the crew set the equipment up. It was so fascinating how they set everything, meticulously set everything, and put the mics and I couldn't wait to be in a band to do that, to get that Marshall, those 4 cabinets, or those 2 SVTs just sitting next to each other with that one head, just the way it looked, the beauty of it. And so I always went. So I sat there. Everybody else is getting higher wherever they're doing, and I'm sitting there watching the road crew change the thing over. And okay, we'll get down to Chris Squire. He had a Marshall head and a 12 cabinet, and I'm going, wow, that's weird. And then they rolled in the acoustic bass head, 215s, and just the head.
The 371,
And there was 2 wires, and his bass had the split. I had one of those Rickenbackers for a second, and that was it. And I went, okay, that's how he does it. I never got a chance to do it until King's X had the second record, and we were going to go on a major tour with AC/DC. And I said to our manager, look, I need a bunch of instruments. I mean, we're playing with AC/DC. I've got 1 folded cabinet, 18 cabinets. Come on. So he got all that I needed, and we got a hold of Ampeg and bottoms and cabinets, and that's where it started.
Yeah, there's no way you were going to get all that treble with a folded horn, 18. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an acoustic 360. Yeah.
But the thing with what the folded horn was, there was so much high end coming out of my trainer head that the folded cabinet kind of buried it and gave me enough low end to at least make it sound like a bass. Yeah. And that always helped. When I got a front cabinet, there was no low end at all.
Yeah. Going back to the John and Whistle, because I agree with you 1,000%. That he never sounded the same live as it did on record.
Right.
How did you get around that, convincing the producer to actually keep your tone on the record?
I don't think there was a problem with King's X ever. Before that, everything I did in the studio, they just put me direct and said, this is the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I would have my tone behind me, and I played with it, and you'd listen to the record, and it wasn't there. And I wasn't in a position to say, this is what I want, you better do it. But by the time I got to King's X, we had been beating our heads against the wall for like 8 years before we first got a record deal. And at that point, I had honed in on this tone, and nobody was going to change it. And I was never challenged, ever. And I would have fought it to the death.
Great. Great. And now it's become iconic. And you have products. You have your amp line with that Tech 21 and a fly rig. And before that, you had the Sans amp. I have one of the rack-mounted Sans amps, and one of the presets is the King's X bass preset.
Yeah. Andrew told me that he saw King's X play in London on our first tour. We were playing Astoria, and he said he heard my bass tone and said he wanted to build amps that sounded like that. And I've known him forever, and we've had discussions for years and years and years, and he made the Sans amp and some other things that kind of emulated it, but he never could nail it. And I wouldn't give him my secrets. I don't know why, but just something said don't. And we talked, and one day he showed me a pedal about 5 or 6 years ago. He said, check this out. And I played through it, and I went, oh, dude, you're close. I says, you are really close. You've got it. And he says, okay, let's talk about an amp. Let's build an amp. And he says, if you give me all your secrets, we'll make you an amp. And I'm going, okay. And so we got together. It took us 2 years. And they dialed in everything that I do, from the EQs in, the EQs out, the highs, the lows, the separations, all the little things that I did to get my tone, the minute things. They put chips in to do that. So that instead of the high, or like the high end going into a compressor, then coming out into an EQ, but EQ going into the compressor before it even comes out, so in and out, they just did all that stuff in the box, and you can vary it. So the good thing about it is you can tune it to me, you could tune it to Geddy Lee, you could turn it to what's his name from Motown,
James Jemerson.
Yeah. I mean, you can get anything out of it, which blows my mind. I didn't know that, but people are posting things. This one guy posted, said, check this out, SVT Vintage, and he dialed it in, and it had that sound.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it did more than we thought it would, and people are buying it like crazy.
Is it mostly analog?
I guess it's all analog. There's nothing in there that's tubes. It's so small. It's bigger than a cigarette box almost.
Yeah, no, I've seen it. I saw it at NAMM. Incredibly impressive. Yeah,
it's been the #1 seller at Amazon, at Sweetwater and Musician's Friend in the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, especially today. I mean, do you do a lot of flyaway gigs?
I don't. But what the thing was with my amp, when they built my amp, it was a boutique amp. It cost about $2,000. Who's going to go buy that when they don't know anything about it or what you can do with it? And we didn't really push it, and I didn't do any very many clinics or anything about it. It just didn't. A handful of people bought it, and they love it, but it just was too much. So they did the right thing, though. I said, why don't you make a pedal? And they said, no, we got to do the amp first. And it was a marketing thing. And then they put the pedal out because everybody wanted the amp but couldn't afford it. So now the pedal is like a little under $300, and everybody goes, I can buy that. And it was a thing they did, and it works. People are buying it like nuts. I mean, literally, just people. I can't wait to get mine. I got mine coming, and I get posts. Bass player for Blue Oyster Cult's got one. A guy from Buck Cherry just texted me and said he got one. Mike Inez from Alice in Chains texted me a couple weeks ago and said, I got 2 of them. And he says, I hooked it up for sound check from the get. I love it. Wow. And I'm going, whoa. Jeff Amy told me that it was the best distortion pedal he ever heard. Wow. And what's his face from Metallica? Robert said the only reason he doesn't use it on stage is because Metallica is locked into certain endorsements and there's certain things they can't do. But he said he loves it too. I can go down the list, but it sounds like I'm bragging, but it's a good thing.
A tube harmonic distortion? When you say distortion,
it has a tube harmonic distortion, but there's no tube as far as I know.
Yeah, but it's emulating.
Yeah, there's certain. The thing. Remember trainer heads?
Yeah, of course.
They had this crystally sound, like the tubes were. This like you could almost see stars coming out of it, and I could never get that kind of a high end smoothness out of any other amp but the trainer. And I told them that this is the sound. When you hit this note, you can hear the tubes doing this.
Is that a guitar head you're talking about?
Yeah, it's a guitar head.
So you were using a trainer guitar head.
Actually, it was a trainer bass head, but there was no bass in it. That was the weird thing about it. There's no low end in the trainer bass head amp. It's just a guitar amp with says bass on it, literally. But there's that thing that happens, but it only can happen if it's only a certain frequencies going through it. Other for the low end, more low end stuff like that can't go through it. So we figured out a way to. Well, in my rack, I used to EQ all the low end out of the high end amp. So that when it distorted, it didn't sound like a bass distortion, because bass distortion is horrible. It's just like, it doesn't. Oh yeah. Bass distortion flops up. Yeah. And the good thing about it, low end though, is I had an Ampeg SVP preamp.
SVP.
Yes, they don't make them anymore. They used to make them. Not too many people bought them. I had a couple of them, and they've all blown out on me now. But what I loved about them was there's this little saturation knob, and when you turned it up, your low end turned it like you were playing a church organ. The low end rumbled, but it didn't distort. But when you hit that low, you shook. And that with my high end, with the crystally sound, I had a great tone live with that stuff running to it. So we tried to get that. I got almost all of it. They didn't know how to get the SVP, that thing, but it's close, and it's fine with me because I just don't use it anymore. But
and you guys are tuned to what? But in the different projects. I mean, King's X tunes to.
We tune to C. Our guitars are drop C now exclusively.
And the other projects that you do.
Whatever key people wants to play it in. Mostly we're lower. KXM, I think we're half step to a whole step lower. There's a couple songs, whatever. When we start jamming, it's whatever tuning we're in. I remember George had a guitar and it was tuned to B or something. He was just playing around with it, and me and Ray came in and I says, "What you got, George?" He goes, "I'm just using my B guitar," and I went and got my 5-string. And so we just wrote. I forgot what it was now, but it was just we just don't think about keys. We just throw things up there.
And you're playing a Schecter?
Yeah.
Is that your signature model?
No, I have a signature model. It's a hollow body. It's a diamond, basically. It's the model, but it says dUg on it, and it's semi-hollow body, and it's black. And that's what I love. The what I was playing, the 5-string with George, is just a Schecter 5-string, just stock. Because I go down there and just get one of everything. Can I have one of those? They go, sure. And I want one of everything. See, I don't like 5-string basses, but I've used it on a couple songs because anyway.
Now, you mentioned earlier that Chicago. Are you from Chicago?
Joliet, Illinois, right down the street. We're a suburb, or a western suburb, they call us.
Yeah. I lived for about 2 or 3 years in Lyle.
I know where that's at.
Yeah. So, did you play the club scene?
I never played much club scenes when I lived in the Chicago area, because the first 10 years, from 20 to 30, I was in a Christian band, so couldn't get a gig anyway that wasn't Christian, pretty much. But I went to clubs all the time. You saw Cheap Trick back in the day, and so I remember the band called Conqueror Worm. Nobody's ever heard of them. I've never been able to find anything. There were so many great bands.
They were the baddest
ass
bands.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was playing them.
I probably ran into you somewhere playing bass, right?
Playing bass. The Thumbs.
Yes,
the Thumbs.
You played in the Thumbs?
No. I mean, but they were in the same circuit.
Okay.
Playing with the Thumbs. And as a matter of fact, I was in a band later on with Pete Comita, who was the guitar player in the Thumbs.
Wow.
He moved to LA.
Wow.
And that's another thing. You were one of the very few musicians that did not make the LA trip. In the 70s, because everybody else did.
I didn't go because I don't think I knew. I just didn't really know what was going on in the world. I mean, if I'd buy a Deep Purple record or a Hendrix record and it said it sold 1 million copies, it didn't mean nothing to me. I had no idea if a band sold or not. I just liked what I liked, and I didn't think about that stuff. I didn't think about that stuff till the 80s, when I started realizing, this is a job and we got to work this stuff. Before, I just thought you make a record and you go play, and I didn't even think about getting paid. That was
an awful realization. This is business. Really?
What was my point? I went around
not moving to LA.
Oh, yeah. I just didn't realize it. I remember that I heard about stuff in LA and stuff like that, but it wasn't a big deal. And even in the 80s, in the 70s, something said to me, I get these, not voices, but I hear something and says you should do this, and most of the time I do it now, but back in the day I didn't. And something said to me, move to Seattle, Washington. And this is late 70s.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm thinking, there's nothing up there, but there's just urge, and I never did it. And I wonder if I had of, because the 90s, I know all those guys.
Yeah.
And who knows? I might have been in bands with them or something, or no, because I'm 10 years older than all of them. I probably would have been in bands and watched them grow up, and you know what I'm saying? It would have been a different thing. I don't know if I would have been successful or nothing, but
there's a certain purity to your music. Do you think if you would have moved over to Seattle, that would have kept the same purity?
I got you.
You think so?
I never thought about purity. I never think about what's the word for it? I've never broken down everything that I do as a part of it. Why?
It's not your job. It's our job as the listener and the fan to hear you and say, "Oh, I really appreciate what Doug is